slide. First, I'd like to thank Susan for compiling all of the information that was a result of the survey that came as a recommendation to the district accountability committee. So thank you, Susan, for doing all of that. And, we had 657 surveys in total, quite a few from parents and community, about 343 or so. It turns out that we were unable to differentiate between parent and community, and in fact, on some of the surveys, people identified themselves as both, which is consistent with what we did last year when we ran a similar survey. We had many people identify themselves as both, and so that's to be expected. Student surveys are always easier to get because they're captive, so to speak, so we had quite a bit of participation there. Next slide. So it turns out that most of the folks have not attended a meeting such as this, but I do know that a lot of folks have asked me different questions about what's going on with the 4-day calendar, and they're interested and they're engaged, even though they cannot necessarily attend one of these meetings. It turns out that about 2/3 of the folks surveyed are in favor of the 4-day week, and that's if we were to remove the students from the survey. Last year when we did a similar survey, we did the same thing. The main reason being because we think parents and community members tend to have a bit more perspective on what's important as far as these sorts of issues go. Nevertheless, with the students, it's about 3 to 1. Without students, it's at about 2 to 1 ratio in favor of the 4-day week. This is also consistent with the survey we did last year. We asked about whether or not people were interested in leaving things as is, going with a 4-day week, starting the year earlier, year-round school, and it turned out about 42% without students were in favor of the 4-day week, against about 20% in favor of leaving things as is, which I read as a 5-day week. So that's about a 2 to 1 ratio again. So these numbers are pretty consistent with what we've seen in the past. So what I want to try to do now is address some of the questions that came up with the survey. And I'll do the best I can. I may have to defer some of these answers to other folks. But one of the ideas or questions that came up was a voluntary tax increase. This is certainly a good idea. I think one big issue with this approach is the problem with the timing. Something like this would take the same amount of time that we'd have to use to pass something like a bond issue. So for this year, I don't think that's a practical solution, but it could certainly potentially be a solution for our long-term finances. How much structured teaching is going to go on in 4 days? I don't foresee any change in the way teaching is done. The only real difference would be that each of the periods would be a little bit longer in the day. You'd have to get more creative, obviously, as time increases to keep students from getting disengaged and keep them active, but I don't see much of a huge difference in structured teaching or the way things are taught. Addressing the third question, this is absolutely not based on sports whatsoever. I think the main driver of this is the trade-off of finances and how well we can ensure that our children are educated. If we don't do something like this, we have to find $150,000 or $49,000 somewhere, and that's likely going to come in teacher cuts. So it's a trade-off, and nothing's free in this world. So if we don't go to 4-day week, we have to think about other options. Now, this was a recurring theme throughout the entire survey. I read through all 46 pages last night, and what will students do? Probably the same things they do in the summer and other days off that they have. That would be things like mountain biking, skiing, Boys and Girls Club. There'll be opportunities for high school students to babysit and those sorts of things, opportunities for folks to take extra work during the week at a job they might be holding. So there are lots of things that can be done in the community, and I think Brett will address some of those issues as far as the Boys and Girls Club goes. Combining the BB School District in principle sounds like a great idea because you you get economies of scale. You can reduce your overhead by 50%, roughly. This would also be a very long-term solution if we were to do it, probably several years in the making. And it's my understanding that BV actually has a slightly different tax structure than we do. So they're able to find additional funds that we cannot. And so the incentive for them to combine with us may not be there. So that would have to be determined. The 4.5 day school week, this is certainly something that could be done, but it doesn't really reduce the need for transportation and food service, and you still have your utilities on for that additional half day. So it certainly could be something to be considered, but I'm not sure we'd realize the same amount of savings that we would if we were to select a day of the week to shut all the buildings down. 4 day for high school only. To be honest, I haven't thought about this. It may in fact be a reasonable approach to this, although once again you don't see the same type of savings if we shut down older buildings like Longfellow Elementary School that have sort of inefficient utilities and those sorts of things. Middle school is probably better than the best of the three buildings in terms of efficiency. So you wouldn't realize, once again, the same amount of financial savings. Is the 4 day week really preparing you for the future? Yes and no. You have to be flexible in times of need. So I would say no, it doesn't prepare people for a 5 day work week. But neither does college if you're heading to college. I mean, you go to school Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. So, you still get the same sort of treatment at the college level, and then you go out into the real world. From my personal experience, it takes a while to adjust to a 5 day work week, I have to admit. But you just learn to be flexible, and you go with it. Have we explored the idea of year-round? We surveyed last year very briefly, in that survey I mentioned earlier, whether or not people in the community and student body, faculty, and so forth would be interested in a year-round school, and we came back at 2% out of all those surveys. So it's not something at this point that I think folks are interested in. So that's the end of sort of the repeating questions. Obviously, these aren't all the questions that were on the survey, but Susan was gracious enough to read through all of them and sort of combine them into main idea questions that people had. There was also another category in the survey that asked folks, hey, do you have other ideas that would help save the school district money? And these are some of them. Charge bus fees. We're doing this now for sports, as I understand it. We are also going to begin charging for field trips, and I win. I don't believe, Mr. Webb, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't currently charge for regular school bus service for school days. I understand there's some history of consolidating maintenance, food service, and athletics together in the district. I'm not familiar with that, and I don't know if that's something that the administration has considered. So do you want to address that, or just pass, or we'll pass? We talked about CREST. This is one of the things that could give high school kids incentive. If we do go to a 4 day week, you have this option of giving some students credit for doing academic enrichment. For example, I could take some of my Calc students and have them run tutoring sessions for kids who need that in the off days, or they could take that opportunity to babysit or earn themselves some extra money that way. I might also add that this would also provide perhaps some opportunities for folks in the community at large to establish some accredited child care services and those sorts of things. Cut the director, teacher, and learning position. I don't know how to address that. I'm sure